That changes. I love Raymond Carver because he writes about the type of people I understand. I grew up blue collar. I was the only person in my family who went to college, and I paid my way through all my programs. So Raymond Carver's characters are people I really respond to. And then I also, Ian McEwan. You know, I mean, I read Atonement and it makes me want to give up writing. I'm like, oh, he's just so good.
But I thought about that book when I read your book. I mean, that when Sissy told a lie about her sister being and I
right, with Bryony.
That's what kind of it reminded me of that part of that story.
So yeah, Ian McEwan definitely. I love Michael Cunningham's The Hours because it's like a really beautifully structured book. And then I also try to branch out with poetry because that helps me rhythmically. Carver's very rhythmic, absolutely. And I was reading Yehuda Amakai's poetry and Rainer Marie Rilke's poetry when I was writing this too. And you know, Rilke has that great sense of yearning, like he's not afraid to say, "Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels' hierarchies?" And yearning, not being afraid to yearn, was important to me in this book. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite children's authors?
The Little Prince was very important to me when I was growing up. The Velveteen Rabbit was very important to me. My mom, she started me reading really early, and she got me the whole, the classics. So I had like Black Beauty and Little Women and 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I would just whip through those. I loved being in different worlds when I was little. So, and then also poetry. She bought me a lot of poetry books.
You don't have children?
I don't. Can you tell?
No. I could buy that answer. Well, you can't buy your book, at least from what I've heard you read, because that is the most panicky feeling you can ever have, is I can't find a child. And if you can capture that without having children, you can write anything. You can write about outer space, because now you have been able to put yourself in that feeling. I can't imagine how that, I can't imagine how that would feel, but it would be awful, and you captured it. So without children, it's pretty impressive.
Well, I'm a big baby, so it was easy to write with the kids. I'm pretty much the emotional equivalent of a 7-year-old, so Sissy and I got along real well. Yeah.
The last couple of interviews I've read with writers or talks that I've been to, they've all mentioned how certain characters would be less creative, or they would just appear or speak to them. Did you have that?
Yeah. It almost feels like it's the most bizarre thing. It's like you channel them. It's like somebody's just speaking through you. And Natalia was like that. Natalia, I read an account of a young girl who was in a concentration camp, a gypsy girl, and she was hanged and she didn't die. And they sent her back to be hanged again. So I thought, like, what an awful thing that this poor little girl had to die twice, essentially. And I started thinking, what would happen if that girl got out? If somebody took pity on her. And it didn't seem so, outlandish. That you probably had German couples who were desperate to have children, and maybe some could be smuggled out in the past. So I read that and was so moved by it. I sat down and wrote chapter 4 probably in a day. And I said to my husband, I just feel like it came right through me. And Resurrection Fern, my new novel now, because they're very yappy in that, I've written a few chapters and I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to write down what they say. They were saying things that were so good, I was like, that's not coming from me, because I'm really not that smart. They were such smart things they were saying. So yeah, it does happen. And then some you labor with. I mean, some characters really just are characters, and you're sort of like, I don't know what this person's about, but I need a subplot.
Your new book, what time period is it?
It's for the most bizarro reason on the planet that I have not been able to come up with an answer yet for. It's set in 2003. I wanted it after 9/11, but I could have said it today. I don't know why I didn't. It started getting to the age of the characters, and I didn't want them to be too old. And I had in mind crazy things that you stress over when you decide. But 2003. I know that's not a great answer because I don't know.
I just didn't know what time period.
Yeah.
If it was back in the 70s.
Well, and the neat thing about Whitesburg, because you've been there, I mean, short of our library, and we got the bank, you know, I mean, it feels like it could be 200 years, you know, ago.
The roundabout.
So I'm interested in those places, though, that still feel very old-fashioned. That, you know, you walk into them, and it sort of messes with your senses a little bit, because you don't have the things that you expect to find. I was telling Martha, there's a line in Resurrection Firm, before we got the bank, that was, you know, it didn't even have a bank you could dream about robbing, you know, and it just... I feel very affectionate for Whitesburg. Yeah.
Do you ever worry when you're writing that not to put too much current events or slang into your writing so that it doesn't become dated, or?
I think it's a fine line. I mean, you have to have enough markers that people will say to you, hey, I felt like I was in the 70s. I personally don't worry too much about it. I tend to like to put in popular references, you know, when I'm writing short stories and things like that. And then, you know, when you're going through the process of the book with the house, you know, if they think it's too much, you usually have somebody weigh in at some point and say, I think this is too obscure, people won't get the reference. But mostly, you know, you put it in there to give some kind of sense of authenticity and placement in time. Yeah.
Do you define your characters as a book of actors before the book, or do they evolve during the book?
They always evolve, for me. I mean, I have a sense of what they're like. And then as you write them, they end up saying things that you didn't expect, and you have to kind of modify how you look at them as they talk to you. And it really does become that kind of process, which is, I suppose, a little like schizophrenia in writing. But you know, I do try to listen to what they're saying. And if it seems like they want to go in a direction that I hadn't planned, I need to pay attention to that. And so they teach me a lot about themselves, for sure.
What's the timeline on your book? When did you start it? When did you finish it? And then how did you get into Random House?
I have a fantastic, fabulous agent. No, this is my best answer for how I got Random House. I started Precious and wrote a few chapters in a few months, and I met my agent at a conference, and she loved what she read. And I had a completed short story collection that I could not get placed. And she said, I'm feeling really good about this. I'm going to send it out to auction. And she signed me right away. She didn't have any changes for the 85 pages. And within 2 weeks, no, it was a 10-day auction. By the end of that time, we had in a few bids from different houses, and Random House won the bid. And then they gave me 9 months to finish the book, which I did. And then it's a very slow process because places like Random House, they're very meticulous. So you go into general revision for, you might have 2 or 3 months to do that, which they wanted me to deepen the characters a little, and the ending needed some work. And then from there you go into line editing, so they send it back to you, and then you approve that, and then you send it to them, and they check it again, and then it goes to copy editing, where it starts to be set in the galleys, and then it goes to legal department. I had to change names in my novels several times because they were either too specific or too general. And my friend said to me, you know they get paid by the hour, that's why you go through so much hassle. That's why you go through so much hassle with legal. But she was very nice. And so, I mean, this book I wrote in a year, maybe 13 months, and then it went into editing, and then it was kind of in the pipeline just waiting to be released. I don't know how long Resurrection Fern will take. I mean, you know, I have about 70-some pages, and I did a lot of drafting over the summer because I was really lonely after I finished this book. And I was like, I got to start a new big book. And then I whipped out a few chapters pretty quickly, but now I don't know what to do next, so I'm thinking about it. I'm hoping it comes to me in a dream or something.